Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. As always, this is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank you for choosing to fly over the friendly airwaves with us here on our state-of-the-art radio program, Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Now, folks, without any further ado, let's go ahead and delve into the topic I have slated for this program because I think it's a fairly big one. Justice Stephen Breyer has announced that he will be retiring from the highest court in the land. He has served for approximately 28 years, having been placed on the bench or nominated for the bench by President Bill Clinton. I believe it was back in 1996, 94 or 96. Let me take a look at the article itself. 28 years. He was put up by Clinton 28 years ago. 1994. 1994, because I can do math, clearly. Anyway, he was put up at that time, and so he's certainly seen a lot change on the courts over the years, and he's certainly been one of the boisterous members of the left, a solid left-leaning judge and justice. I even remember at the time that I first went to law school that he had been among the longest serving. And I started law school back in 2008 and graduated in 2011, so I'm no spring chicken on that one either. But he was, when it came to oral arguments in the Supreme Court, he was always ready, willing, and able to badger anybody who came before the court. He just loved badgering. Even people that he sided with, as we saw with the vaccine mandate OSHA case just recently. But anyway, this is not all that surprising. That's a long time to be on the court. But again, doesn't it seem just a little bit of a coincidence that he'd be stepping down when Biden has been suffering defeat after optical defeat in a glaring, open, and obvious fashion with respect to his agenda and everything that he's been putting forth here? All of that is happening for a reason. And I think that this one here is something that kind of, at least from Breyer's point of view, is going to come down to a win-win situation. It's a win-win situation for him because I'm sure he's getting old and a little tired of it. And he's reading the political tea leaves as they're unfurling before his shocked and horrified eyes. And he's seeing that maybe now is the time to get out. It's time to get out while the getting's good. And I could certainly see that as being part of it. Because when it comes to politics, as I have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes, the notion of perception, the illusion that you're creating, oftentimes matters more than reality in and of itself. And that this is something that the left is typically very good at, something that they pride themselves on. Their propagandist narrative, their initiative, their agenda always comes first and foremost, and anything else is secondary. And that is certainly going to be the case with the Biden administration. It has been the way they've tried to play it. Think of the whole January 6th narrative that they've attempted to foist down our throats. Think of the way that they have engaged in intellectually disingenuous arguments and statements all along. Think of how Biden even did that disingenuous phone call to Peter Doocy after he called him a stupid son of a bitch on a hot mic. There is always that sort of thing unfurling for the Biden administration, but it doesn't just stop there. Normally, what you'll see with a changing of the guard on the highest bench in the land is that there'll be some claim that it's going to change the ideological bent of the court, or that there will be some unknown to it. And yes, there will be an unknown to it. And the way that the judiciary works is we don't like unknowns. We like to have some semblance of predictions, particularly when it comes to the highest bench, because we want to know how rulings are going to be handed down. That goes for your attorneys and people that are parties before the court alike. you want to have some semblance of knowing how it's going to go so that you know how to set up your arguments, how to structure it, and how to make sure that you're essentially dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's so that you don't go up in front of the court and look like an idiot, or you make predictions and lose because, well, your reputation really matters. But with respect to this, the normal thing is, particularly when Trump was in power, and particularly with how they had tried to push Merrick Garland as the final one for Obama when he was still in office, because you remember Antonin Scalia had passed away in 2016. Well, in this case, it's not going to matter because the court has shifted. And thank God we didn't have Merrick Garland, who is now our Attorney General, put onto the court, because had he been, we would be facing a more leftist court. But in this case, it's not going to be that big of a deal because Breyer was already one of your left-wing hotheads. So at best, it'll nudge the court maybe a little left, because the person that they select to be his replacement will certainly check all the boxes for the type of identity politics that has become the rage and obsession of the modern left. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this is how it's going to play out. We've already got the shift with Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Comey Barrett. But we can see that that's not going to matter. The Biden administration has been facing loss after loss here, and their agenda is essentially unraveling before the eyes of the public, and so they are desperate to have some sort of a narrative victory here. And so it's going to be spun as a great ideological victory for the Biden administration. The media, the legacy media, will attempt to construe this as a great ideological victory for Team Biden because he needs something. He needs a bone. He needs a way to come out of this looking like he smells like a rose when he smells like what he usually leaves in his pants uncontrollably. At this point, it's beyond denial. They can attempt to deny it all they want, but the great weight of the evidence clearly shows beyond a shadow of a doubt that Biden's out to lunch. Biden is really a disaster. He's a disaster for the left. He's a disaster for the nation as a whole. But they are going to circle the wagons because, again, the appearance of having a victory here is what matters. And that's what it boils down to. It's a game. It's a dog and pony show. They're going to pull out all the stops. It's going to be smoke and mirrors, and they're going to construe this as some great victory, but it's not going to be a great victory. Like I said, the dynamics of the court have already been set. There's no way that they're going to change the ideological bent of the court, and so it's not going to be a big deal. But they have to do that. They have to paint it that way, because as things fall apart for Biden, he's in great need of a narrative-defining change. And what better way for the left to change the narrative here than to have the replacement of Breyer be ready-made for the type of identity politics narrative and drivel that they've been pushing for years now. And so Biden will latch on this retirement as an opportunity to define the narrative. And so that means that we can safely make certain predictions about what type of candidate the nominee that he's going to put up is going to be. It's not going to be the type where he's going to go out and pick somebody based on merit. Because meritocracy is certainly not what the modern hysterical left in America, or indeed anywhere for that fact, cares about in present day 2022. What do they care about? Well, they're going to have it be identity politics. Because if you think about it, that's what it's always been about. Look at how Terry McAuliffe was defeated there in Virginia because of his stance saying that parents shouldn't be able to have a say over the curriculum that is taught to their students, and therefore anyone who's against critical race theory is an idiot. Well, that wound up costing him. Look at the way that they just sang the praises and accolades of Kamala Harris as being the first person of color that we've had as a VP. So the identity politics route is the one that they're going to go down. It's the one that they've been salivating over in election cycle after successive election cycle. It's the one that they have geared their entire party towards ever since the rapid ascendancy of Barack Hussein Obama in 2008, doubling down on it in 2012. It's where they are now. And it's an even greater push now, because they see this as that golden opportunity of a lifetime to literally have that kind of an impact. And, of course, Breyer doesn't have to look far back into the annals of history to see how he would be treated if he did not take this opportunity to step down. Again, when Ginsburg passed away, you remember how conflicted the left were? Oh, they were so conflicted. They were mad at her. They knew that she knew her health wasn't doing that well, but that old bat just wouldn't let go of power, and therefore she was the one that ultimately allowed there to be an ideological shift on the court. And isn't it great? Isn't it great? It is. Because now they really are put in the unenviable spot of doing something that's just a dog and pony show, a parade, a fake narrative. Because it's all they've got. It's all they've got. They can't just sit there and say that they can make a meaningful difference. They can't sit there and point to any successful thing that Biden has done, because Biden hasn't been a success. Biden has been the exact and polar opposite of anything that could rightly be referred to as successful. And so the narrative continues. The narrative continues. Essentially, for Breyer, he can get out now and claim that he threw his fellow left-wingers a bone. It also tells me that he can see the writing on the wall for this November and what's probably going to happen in 2024. Because let's face it, what's happening to the Democrats right now is their agenda is falling apart. They've pushed too hard, too fast, and the people are reacting negatively to it. The polls show this time and again. Biden's underwater in polling. He's unpopular. His narrative and initiative and agenda is falling apart. And he has no way to get around that. There's no way that they can construe a true victory for him throughout any of this. In fact, the only way that they can make this a victory is to go down the identity politics route. And so it's either going to be a woman, a gay guy, a black person, a Latino, even though they've already got all of that. And it doesn't matter. None of that should be a qualifier or disqualifier for the highest bench, but it is to the left when they engage in identity politics. This is all they do. They just see the surface. It's the surface issue that matters, the surface issues that matter. They're no different than they were 150 years ago. When they were racist then, they're racist now. They're bigots in every way. And of course, they try and project that onto their opponents, because that's the way that they can attempt to sit there and claim that their views are valid, and that what they're doing is valid, and that they are the great savior. But they're not. So Breyer is essentially doing a cost-benefit analysis here and seeing that, hey, maybe this really is the time for me to get out. Because everybody's so crazy now. They're going to paint me as being the white supremacist type if I stay in. And I can get out now, and they really can't tarnish my legacy that much. And that's exactly how it's going to play out. The graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the legacy media are going to beat the drum and basically have this parade of woe is me, look how great we are, and look, and Can this one pick that we have now be enough to save Roe v. Wade? Because already the rumblings are there for that. And again, as I said all throughout this episode, the ideological bent of the court is not going to be shifted that much. It's not going to be a winning battle for them. And maybe the abortion issue is one that they could win on. I don't care to hazard a guess on that. What I do see is they're going to pick a radical, and it's going to check off the boxes of identity politics, and they're going to tout this as some sort of victory for their progressive, quote-unquote, agenda, and it's all going to be used to show how great it is, and you can expect them to run the game of Orange Man Bad. Now, they're going to ignore how there was Amy Coney Bryant that was a woman selected by Trump and was good and had the merit, and they're going to ignore all the crap they did to Kavanaugh, and they're going to ignore the boisterous nonsense that was there for Gorsuch as well. And what anyone's outlook on any of those justices is neither here nor there. But what we are facing is this agenda that they're going to push, this propagandist narrative, and it will boil down to that. They've got to distract somewhere. And so they're going to take anything they can get, and this is about all they will get. In that sense, I view Breyer as essentially being a sacrificial lamb, but at least he's going to go home and spend out the rest of his twilight years there with a healthy pension, and he can just sit there and laugh as it all burns. His work is done. The damage he's done has already been placed on the court, and he's happy with that. And in that sense, he's the only one that's really winning in this. Because the Biden administration is not going to really have the victory that their propagandist narrative is going to spin this as. Because that's not a victory that it's going to be possible for them to have. But that's how this will play out. And it's going to be an interesting thing to watch, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have a fun ride with this one. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to thank you for choosing to fly the friendly airwaves with us here at the Wright Flyer. I hope to see you again the next time we fly over these airwaves. Please do take care. See you around.